Okay, so here is a brief look at chronic obstructive pulmonary disease by Alan Davis. So I want to thank you for listening to this presentation for University of Syro-Methodist and Faculty of Philosophy in Trnava, Slovakia. This is for Science and Technology of English for Juraj Mistina's class. So let's begin. So what we'll talk about today is first, what is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? What are some symptoms of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and causes of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and the management and treatment for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. From this point on, I will refer to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease as COPD. So, which leads us to this first slide. What is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is pretty much a long-term inflammation of the lungs and its parts, and it limits the air and or obstructs airflow throughout the lungs. You can see in the picture that you have the air well and the muscles and all the different pulmonary parts, and how it gets smaller, how its shrinkage prevents the flow of air and due to the inflammation. And not only that, you can also see a greater development of thick, sticky mucus, which also blocks the airways. That mucus is also called sputum, or it's also called phlegm. So overall, this creates breathing problems for the person, and as we all know, humans need to breathe to live. COPD used to be called emphysema and or chronic bronchitis, but now those are just subclasses, conditions of COPD. So some common symptoms of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease include shortness of breath, as we talked about. That's due to the limited airway, the passage of air in the lungs, and the lungs are you could say, or one of the things that help power and help keep your blood flowing through the body. It talks about the phlegm and the sputum production. That's just the irritant, but due to the inflammation, it produces that wheezing, which is that sound when someone's trying to breathe. It's kind of like that, it kind of has that constant sound in the back. I really like that word, wheezing. I think it has a lot of interesting, it just sounds really interesting to me. But yeah, wheezing is a common sign that's kind of got that wet breathing kind of. Due to the lack of oxygen in the blood, you also have what's like a lack of energy. You run out of energy real quick. Your body just can't oxygenate your blood and your muscles to help it do its job. Also, because of that, sometimes you also develop swelling in the lower legs, in your ankle, your feet, and the legs, and you start seeing people their legs get swollen. Maybe just the blood can't flow as freely because of that. There's not oxygenated well enough. You get this really thick, it's just not a thick blood that moves through the veins and stuff because of that. And there's also what I call episodes of exacerbations, and this can be due to many different. This could be due to many different reasons. Something like maybe you're at home and there's some construction work around your home being done, the dust or any air pollutants that come, or maybe you're at maybe a fireworks show and there's lots of smoke or something like that. Any of these maybe reasons to create this pulmonary exacerbations, like this episode, it's really hard all of a sudden to breathe and just kind of maybe flares up the inflammation of that. So those are some symptoms of that. So you have these brief moments of I need to go to the hospital because I can't breathe feeling. So some causes of that, mentioned previously, some issues of COPD. One of the biggest, of course, is smoking. Found out that a lot of people who smoke will develop COPD in their life. It irritates the lungs and creates an inflammation later on in their life. Other causes could be also from something called air pollution, just air irritants or irritants in the air that doesn't irritate the air, but it irritates your lungs. Genetics, with the double AT deficiency, I was looking at this and there was it's linked to like asthma or something like that. It's just your body can't process some of the irritants in the air. And then there's another way, which is workplace exposure, and that's just maybe being exposed to chemicals, or like construction workers or people who work when there's maybe a lot of fumes or things that are going to damage, air pollutants that are going to damage your lungs, and when you're exposed to that constantly. And the last one, or last thing I'm going to talk about, is the management and treatment for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it's kind of like the treatments. What do you do if you get COPD? And one of the first things, if you haven't stopped already smoking, you should quit smoking. As simple as that. That's going to help you out tremendously, going to increase your quality of life. There's also something called oxygen therapy, and that's just having an extra bit of oxygen linked up into your system through either an external source, such as an air tank, or an oxygen, pump that just shoots some oxygen up through your nose, and it helps just increase the oxygen in your body. You can wear that throughout the day, or all the time, depending on your level of COPD. And then they've also developed some medications called bronchodilators, and then what those do is that actually dilates the air veins, or the airway. So instead of it being constricted, it's now opened up, and those can help you breathe, and they have different kinds of those. And also some steroids can also help with the inflammation, so that could reduce inflammation in there, and you can take those either through an inhaler or an oral means. And of course also some antibiotics can also help with inflammation. And some other way would be to exercise. That's going to increase the lung strength, help get your lungs ready for any issues that may come up. And another thing that you can do is to manage your exacerbations. And what that means is don't put yourself in environments where you're going to be around lots of smokers, or there's going to be a lot of air pollution. Weather. Sometimes weather is going to cause problems and be an issue. So just make sure that you take care of yourself and you're aware of your environment. And then also the last, and probably most the most severe treatment is surgery. Surgery, they would actually remove part of your damaged lungs, and hopefully that would stimulate growth for the good lungs to grow. And that's usually just for what I read is that it's usually just for younger people, or maybe in really severe cases. It's not. It's really something that's hard and irreversible once you get COPD. So it's not. There's no definite cure for it right now, but there are ways to help improve quality of life. So, moving on. So I think that concludes pretty much everything that I want to say about COPD. Here's some sources that I used to create this presentation. And also I just want to say that one of the reasons why I chose this is because I do have some people that are personally affected by this disease in my life, and I just want to say that it is a terrible disease, and that if you can, I want you to know a little bit about the impact and how to prevent yourself from getting it. So I'll leave you with that, and I thank you for your attention. Hope you have a great day. Bye.